What's up? I'm Captain Mel Asylum, and here's another sip of Galactic Tea. Sinners. I'm not a huge horror fan. I appreciate horror. I appreciate it for the metaphors that it used the same way science fiction does sometimes. And in this movie, they used it as a metaphor for Americana and white supremacy and comparing the togetherness of people in this melting pot of a country that it would be nice if we were to um, one of working together for freedom, but also losing freedom. And there were two forms in which freedom is being taken away, either by a life of death or a metaphor for a life of death. Music, that how the skill of music is portrayed by our main character or how it's seen by other people is a tool to be used. His father sees it as a tool to be used in the church, which would take away all of his freedoms, all of his individuality, and becoming a vampire does the same thing. So I absolutely love this comparison of the safe death or the violent death. Just comparing religion to the lack of freedom, it really resonates with me right now. And seeing it in a movie that was so blues based without denying the alternativeness of the blues. The whole point of rebelling against the system. He had two systems to rebel against with this sound, the sound that is the origin of rock and punk and all things alternative. Please, I can record on the weekend, and my neighbor has grandkids or whatever that come over on the weekend, and this is just the sound that I live with. So if you can hear that, I'm sorry. Growing up seeing movies that took place in these time periods, this movie takes place in 1932, and as soon as I start talking, they start writing again. There were other cultures here. Like, a lot of black movies only show black and white, or white movies that take place during this time usually only show white people. There were other people there, and these people were actually played by people who were from those time periods. We see older things like Wild Wild West, not the Will Smith one, the one that he was copying, where like you had so many different diverse cultures being represented by people who weren't a part of any of those cultures. They were just painted to look like it. Most of the time, they rarely ever had actual people of that culture to represent all those different cultures. Maybe unless they were European cultures, and then who knows. I loved how they showed two different ways in which cultures understood the supernatural. We have the voodoo side and we have the indigenous side. The supernatural, spiritual aspect of indigenous culture is something that a lot of people associate with indigenous culture because we don't get to really learn of their culture. Um, and the way he just came in and was like, sun going down, we gotta go. Like, we know what's out there. You're on your own. Um, kind of, I felt like reflected that a little bit because they just left. Like, so that would show why we wouldn't know of their knowledge of it because they didn't really make it very known. They were just doing their own thing, mind their own business. Uh, Tracking down the vampire. The progression in which people were turned into vampires, um, somewhat but not directly, showed the progression of which Americans see power or Americana sees power. You have people who were converted, someone who was converted into it, um, someone from Ireland who at one point Americans didn't see as Americans because they were immigrants, and they didn't have the same privilege as white Americans because they weren't from here. Whatever irrational racial bigotry was going on, this was a part of it. This is a part of that history. So then we move on to the husband and wife. I'm telling too much of the movie. I'm supposed to not be doing that. It's been out for a while, and most people have seen it. So whatever. Um, Poor people did not have the same privileges as the American dream. They were being used, still are. Those things that say is supposed to be the greatness about America, they're told that they're going to have, but they're lied to. And so what they end up doing is being pawns for those people who are lying to them. And I don't think a lot of people saw or get that, not necessarily in just this movie, but like in American history. Like people who have all the power tell you, well, you can have some of it too. You can be a part of it. I will at least like you if you help me keep my power. And they don't think twice about it. Maybe some of them do think twice. But in this case, we have a couple who are very much all for helping the people in power to give them nothing but a false sense of superiority, and they're the next to be turned, be eaten, the first to be eaten, the first to see be eaten. Obviously, our original vampire has already been bit off screen somewhere at some point. Uh, maybe I don't know when. So I could figure out when because he did talk about his father land being taken from him by people who are Christian. And I can just Google that. We can Google that. If you Google it, put it in my comments. So, so then next was the girl who was passing, and then they move on to all the melanated people who are having fun, enjoying the blues music that they didn't let them in for. The fashion of the 30s is the only thing I would ever bring back from the 30s. Yeah, yeah. And the music, duh. I mean, we don't have. We can bring back the patterns. We can bring back the sheet music. We can bring back the instruments. The mentality, y'all can keep that. Keep that in the past. We need to learn from it and not bring that back. We don't need any of that. Maybe we shouldn't have to endure. Like if we learn from our past, we can fix that. But we can also learn from the clothing patterns. We can learn from the sheet music. Those things we can keep. Just one thing that I really like about time period pieces is, especially within the last like 300 years, the fashion. It's just very lovely. Sometimes I don't like patterns. Off subject. I watched some stuff from the 50s. I love the cuts of the dresses. I do not like the patterns, but I don't like patterns, period. If other people like patterns, go for it. But I would rather just have like the cutting pattern of the fabric and not the print pattern. I don't like print patterns. Just give me solid black, okay? uh, the greatest scene in the whole movie is during the party at the, what do you call it? My brain is saying clubbing. They were clubbing. This is like the 1930 version of clubbing. Um, and the magic shows while he plays the music, and all the different generations come together like spiritually. And one thing I found really interesting were the girls twerking in the kitchen, because the empowerment of twerking is kind of the equivalent of the empowerment that women had cooking in the 30s. Like you showed that was a way that they were like in authority of their lives and of their status in the world. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, I don't think I'm making any sense. But I do think I'm making sense. Like that was like the place where they had the most power. And in twerking today, women are taking the power of their sexuality and claiming it as their own. And we can complain a lot about like modern female rappers basically being the same as the dancers in the background, the male ones, but it's their work, their talent. They're taking some type of ownership and power over what they're doing. And that's how I see twerking. Most definitely as a skill that I did not have. But I found that was very cool. Also, when he started playing and the like funkadelic style guy shows up playing electric guitar, playing metal. Thank you. Thank you so much for having that. I don't get to see black people playing metal in black movies. So from the depths of my heart, thank you so much. I needed that. And there's going to be a Spider-Punk movie too. Just thinking about that. Like, we don't, alternative blacks don't get represented. And especially when blues is a direct route from rock and roll. Like, rock and roll was appropriated. I mean, blues was appropriated, and now we have rock and roll. And a lot of us who like rock and roll have been told, oh no, that's not for us. When we created it, like, it is the blues. And my understanding of the history of the blues is that it was a way of expressing their discomfort with the world. And it was a positive way of dealing with that discomfort. Like, they weren't hurting anybody. They would sing songs and play instruments. And that's how they coped. And it's wonderful. Like, it's a healthy thing to do. And that's the same thing as punk rock. It was invented to express a discomfort with the system. And same thing, different era. And it's not even that far apart. Like, from the 30s to the 70s, realistically, it's not that far off. Maybe for people who haven't been around that long. I've lived that time period. Not that exact time period, but that length of time. So I don't feel like it's a huge deal. That time period in between those two things happening. Needless to say, I very much like this movie. It is not science fiction. And I was about to say, however, a lot of people find scientific ways to explain vampires. I don't care. I want to talk about this. And I also got to talk about ethnomusicology, which it was a hobby of mine in college. So there you go. That was my review of Sinner. If you've gotten this far in this video, you may enjoy the Voices in Hyperspace, where me and some friends get together and talk about science fiction. I also have a book called Unrooting the System, available on Amazon. Go get yours. It's also on Unlimited, so if you want to read it for free, you can. And I would absolutely love to read your reviews and respond to them.